Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Today we are joined by fifth-generation Nevadan. He is the Vice President of Economic Development and Executive Director of the International Gaming Institute at UNLV. He was the inaugural Research Director at the UNLV International Gaming Institute and was awarded dual professorship in management and hotel management and sociology. Wow. Welcome, Professor Bo Bernhard, to On the Corner of Main Street.
Thank you. I made all that stuff up.
Very impressive, Bo.
Yeah,
I don't know what to start
false.
with that. That's
it's all false.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
And it's an interesting day for us because they're talking now on the RJ about the barrels were possibly, that showed up in Lake Mead, were potentially victims of Tony Spilotro, and Oscar's getting very upset because he's preparing for his next dinner series, and he's saying, this is what they've been doing for years. This is history repeating itself, as they did the same thing in the old days, hypothesizing that Spilotro was involved. I might have to take them down a notch or two.
Stay tuned.
So anyway, let's see what happens. But that's what's going on in my life.
Being a fifth-generation Nevadan, did you have any ties with the mob?
I wish I
did. He's not going to tell you.
Yeah, I do. So we have this awesome oral history program at UNLV where they will literally do your oral history and seal it as long as you want to then be released to your grandchildren, whatever. And my great-grandfather, who was a dealer his whole life, we always went and said to him, you got to do this. You got to do this program. And he said, well, I could do it, but I'd get you kids in trouble. And, you know, as John L. Smith, the writer, said, even those of us that weren't in that world, you like to let folks think that maybe you were, right? Because it was advantageous. So, but no, we were all mostly actually school teachers after my great-grandfather dealt at the old Marina Hotel, which is now consumed by the MGM green beast. It's a part of that tower.
Wow. So where did you grow up? What part of town?
So I grew up in East Las Vegas, not too far from here, stone's throw from here. And
what is the definition of East Las Vegas?
So I was at Charleston and Lamb.
Okay.
Right?
That's pretty east.
Pretty east, yeah. I was a Walter V. Long Leopard. And yeah, I mean, Eastern at the time was super, super east, right? I mean, and so it's just amazing how it's kind of like, I love the fact that we're surrounded by mountains here, right? Like I think most people don't realize that there's sort of a mountain range in every direction. But now it's kind of like wall-to-wall carpeting, right? Now we sort of carpeted up to the wall in every direction.
We're landlocked. That's why people think real estate
will
always worth something.
Be in good shape. We are looking, I can share, as now one of the economic development types in this valley. We're looking very hard at and supporting with some of this federal money, Apex, which is basically as you drive to Utah on the 15, what comes next. Yeah. And then Sloan, which as you drive to LA is right over the mountains from Southern Highlands. So we're spilling out into the lands beyond our
Why not Pahrump?
Yeah, I think Pahrum's it's got its own branding. It's been done.
Rich is shaking his head. Come on. All right, we'll move on.
So how did you get started in your career as in your industry?
So Jossel will like this because he's a football fan. So I was a college soccer player, and in one of my games, they always announced the hometown when they did the starting lineups, right? So they said starting in defensive midfield from Las Vegas, Nevada, Bo Bernhard. I ran out there. And I had a professor.
My position too.
Was that your? Yeah.
I could play anywhere, but I enjoy
You and I are like destroyers of beauty on the football pitch,
That's
right? Basically, right?
Well, to be fair, coming to America from England, you're all destroyers of beauty because no one in America really knows how to play soccer. But
this is very true. That's very true. I was one of those mad kids that tried to play soccer growing up. But I had a professor come up afterwards and he said, hey, you should do a paper in my class on what that was like. Because again, like especially back then, it's the early 90s. nobody had really heard of folks' stories of growing up in the shadows of the bright lights, right? Did you go bury bodies with the mob out in the desert? Was that your fun pastime, right?
Or barrels.
Or barrels, whatever, which depending on the weekend. So I wrote a paper on what that was like. That turned into an honors thesis on the impacts of casinos on the community of Las Vegas. That was right as casinos were being legalized all across the United States. Back then, there were only, it's only Atlantic City and Vegas.
Was this in university?
So it was, yeah. It was
at
a university
Harvard?
paper at Harvard.
So you and I have a lot more in common than just being soccer players. I did my thesis in university. I don't know if I've ever told you this, on the socio-economic impacts of casinos coming to the UK.
No way.
That's what I was interested in.
How did I not know?
However, I did not do mine at Harvard. Mine was at Birmingham University.
Fine
A little less glamorous than Harvard. But that's what I studied. That was my major thesis.
How did I not know this? That's awesome. No wonder you're so smart. And, you're a researcher.
It was the impact of, at the time they were thinking about bringing, they called it Las Vegas style casino to the UK, and what would be the pros and cons of that. And that was in 2003 I did that.
That's spectacular. We do have a ton in common.
Which is ultimately how I ended up.
You got smart though,
here.
and you went, the right path. I, stumbled into academe and became an egghead academic, and I started getting propped up at these hearings in like Missouri, where they were, coming with the pitchforks and the torches, and so the casinos are coming, and there was a ton of not in my backyard, right? The NIMBYism.
So you were at Harvard doing this thesis about the socio-economic impacts of casinos coming across the U.S.
Yeah, and
do they still teach that in Harvard?
No, they didn't even teach it then. In fact, my whole bibliography lived at UNLV. So that's why I came to UNLV, because by gosh, it was my hometown, and I'm super, like a lot of us, protective of my hometown. And I loved the idea of coming back here and trying to build, much like Jonathan has, in different ways, right? But I also knew that there were some really smart people at UNLV studying this, because my bibliography page consisted of them. So I had an awesome doctoral program at UNLV that I wouldn't trade for anything. It was just a fabulous, fabulous experience as a student.
Well, and UNLV has become like one of the top research.
We're a powerhouse, I tell you. So we hosted a gaming industry event the other day, and one of the executives had been in Macau for the last 5 years, right? That happens a lot in our world. And he came back. He grew up in Las Vegas, came back after 5 years. It's like a Rip Van Winkle moment, right? He comes back, and he's like, and he said from the podium at Blackfire, it's amazing. I come back 5 years later, and Vegas now is like a sports town. And he said, and I went downtown the other day, and like the arts dream has really happened. It is absolutely happened. Like, it's amazing. That wasn't right. And then he said, and UNLV's a powerhouse. And I was like, I'm so happy to be like the third peg in that stool. And, the way this is measured in our nerdy academic world is through something called the Carnegie rankings. The Carnegie Institute puts out rankings. It's purely quantitative. It's just measuring all the output of your faculty, right? The number of doctors you churn out, the number of research papers, the number of grants, right? And then they cut it off at the elite level. And we think we probably were the youngest university in history to make the top tier when we made it a few years ago. We made it in 2018, and that puts us up there with the very best universities in the world. So it's kind of like everything else in Las Vegas. It's just dizzyingly fast growth.
So who's I know we're not getting into our subject here, but at a gaming conference like what you're talking about, who's talking at that? Who's leading that?
Yeah. So in our our university, the Gaming Institute on campus, and out in the southwest part of the Las Vegas Valley at a new campus called the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park, where I oversee Blackfire Innovation, which is our innovation hub for the university. We have all kinds of special events, right? So we had LG had their first post-COVID corporate C-suite retreat, which meant that half of the South Korean leadership came out here to our casino of the future. We have a hotel of the future. We have an esports arena. We've got, again, this very innovation-focused space that's just a killer place to host events. Not quite Oscars.
Or our convention space on the third floor, which is excellent too. Does anybody? So Harvard does like business case studies.
Yeah.
Does anyone do a gaming case study, like a hotel casino case study,
so
either at Harvard or here?
Dr. Anthony F. Lucas has produced casino case studies. It's actually something you can buy it online, and you should buy all of his. But he's literally the guy that's written the textbook.
Is he here or
he's here in Las Vegas? And he's a great guy. He's one of those guys. Was in the industry for 20 years, and he kind of ran into a Moneyball situation where he'd bring in his mathematical analyses of like casino promotions that we hope the customers actually don't take advantage of because the math actually is wrong, right? And the old school pit bosses would tell him, "Get out of here, kid." He was a dealer, right? That would do this stuff. went back to school, got his PhD, and has become sort of that guy. And he's written it up in casino operations management, casino operations.
Yeah, Lisa might be able to write that book down. She's done so many promotions that are casino advantageous for the player that she might be able to write that book one day herself.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys ever do road shows, but you should do a podcast from our studios out there.
Would love to, but can you tell us about what it is?
Sure.
To be honest, until Lisa told me about it.
And it's so it opened. Cislak came and cut the ribbon, and we did the whole thing. And Harry Reid, may he rest in peace, was there as well. So the Harry Reid Tech Park is 120 acres that he set aside in a Special Lands Act about 25 years ago. The university has grown so much that we have opened up our second campus out there. It is a business-facing campus. It's an innovation and tech park. Good universities have these all over the world. So Silicon Slopes in Park City are largely called that because the University of Utah has built this innovation and tech park where you bring all the great things from the university to the business world and the tech world, create all sorts of great collaborations and grow an entire community. Research Triangle Park with Duke in Raleigh-Durham has really transformed that economy from a tobacco economy into an innovation economy. And of course, being a Las Vegas kid, we have, since I was born, been talking about, okay, what's the best path to also economically diversify, right? Mm-hmm. How can we also grow off of the goose that lays the golden eggs here and places gaming. And that's actually an explicit mission of mine. So that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about these days.
And is that sort of appointed by the governor, or is that something that you do in a separate?
So, I'm appointed by my president. So we have a new president. His name's Keith Whitfield. He is, for those of us who've been around a while, we've seen a lot of presidents, and a lot of them, again, we've had great presidents. He's a special one. He really is. He cut his teeth as a young neuroscientist, so, not a real bright guy, our president, at Duke. So he knows how a tech park, that's the place, like Daimler-Benz's innovation hub is now in a place that used to be tobacco country and desperately needed to become more than just that, and that's what he's...
Okay, so where is the Blackfire Innovation?
So the best way to describe it is it's right next to IKEA, because everybody knows that.
Oh, okay.
So
where the Bend is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sunset and Durango, a lot of great developments going out there. Actually, the county...
The new Red Rock Casino.
The new Durango station will be right out there, yeah. And so it really has become the tech district in a lot of ways, sort of tracking the 215 freeway.
Okay.
And the way that leads up to the airport, of course. So, yeah, we're becoming a grown-up city in so many ways, right? And how fun is it to be here instead of a city like Birmingham, which is a great city, but the rules were written 500 years ago there.
Birmingham, like where I went? Or
yeah,
Birmingham,
like
Alabama?
No, not Alabama.
Because I've never been to Alabama.
I got I thought your accent was Alabama. I totally messed that up. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
So at Blackfire Innovation, what sort of things are you working on? Can you tell us about the linens and other
Oh, I can. Things? Yeah. So we have over 100 companies out there, including a lot of companies that didn't have a Las Vegas footprint before. So Intel is there, LG is there, Panasonic is there, and of course, all those places sell TVs to places like Plaza to hopefully fill your hotel rooms, but they didn't have a corporate presence. Right. We have the only 2 tech unicorns in Las Vegas moving in there. They both have gaming roots. Sightline Payments, of course, the cashless payments folks are moving their global headquarters to our second floor, as is GeoComply, the geofencing and cybersecurity firm that is CEO'd by Anna Sainsbury. They're moving in down there. So if you're a tech unicorn, of course you're moving in there.
So just so you know, one of the things we want to do on this podcast, which David Lopez, if you are listening, I'm holding you to this. David Lopez is the
I know David well.
CEO of AGS.
UNLV grad.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's been a guest on our podcast. He has told me that he's going to get together the two giants of cashless, Sightline and Every, and have a co-discussion about it on a podcast. So we're trying to put that together.
That'll be fun.
So, but there's an innovation hub, or they're just moving there.
The purposes of our space is actually maybe similar to the Lopez podcast. So LG has the world's coolest, bendiest like TV robots and like super thin screens right next to the Panasonic esports arena, which is a mind-blowing esports space. Now Panasonic and LG hate each other because they're both trying to sell you a flat-screen TV.
Right.
But when we went to them, we're like, look, we're building a university-driven innovation park in Las Vegas. They're like, we're in. We said, okay, but your rival is going to be there too. You should know. They're like, better. That's the way we do it in Palo Alto. That's the way we do it in Austin. That's the way we do it in Boston. Because it's not like they're unveiling stuff that's top secret in there, but they are showcasing and working together and creating collisions, to use the great old Tony Hsieh phrase, right? Yeah. And this is a place about
serendipitous collisions.
Serendipitous collisions are what that building is about.
Okay.
So it's a building packed with, we have a whole third floor of all startup tech companies. So we've got 3 UNLV grads, computer science types, graduated in 2012, left for Silicon Valley because of course you did in 2012. Like, what were you really going to do? They came back with their artificial intelligence company, which is just creating super cool, smart digital humans that could replace John Connolly's digital dealers on the Interblock games, right? So imagine walking up to that game and LeBron James greets you, right? Or Roy Keane, right? And Keane,
Roy Keane, I'd play at that table,
right?
Yeah.
And it screams at you. But then you say, "Hey, I saw you play for Man U in '94 against Birmingham City," and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I remember that game. We won 2-1, right? Because he's a virtual human,
AI,
right? And it is him, right? That company now has moved back to Las Vegas, right? So a lot of us, again,
and they're taking on John Connolly, or they're partnering.
And so,
I like Interblock.
the idea is one of the reasons why John Connolly sniffs around and plays there a lot, and his machines are on our floor, is because we have AI Foundation there who wants to do that with his dealers. We also have the world's first glasses-free 3D company there. And imagine if, again, John Connolly's Interblock virtual dealers were three-dimensional, right? There's a 3-way collision, right, that we made happen in there, and that happens every day, and that's the whole purpose of the place. And, of course, for our students, imagine being 19.
Do you do tours a bit?
We do. Yeah, so reach out if you want to.
We should take a bunch of people out there.
Yeah, it's fun, it's collaborative, it's collision-based, and it's the coolest university space I've ever seen. And it does not look like your grandparents' university.
It's amazing.
Wow.
My favorite part is the rainbow ceiling.
Oh, yeah, very cool rainbow ceiling. You mentioned we have a company
with
that
lights. It was very cool. We should do that at the plaza.
Of course.
You also mentioned the
toilets.
The toilets, right? Were the $15,000 toilets.
Town.
I wasn't going to force you to say that. Actually, where I was headed was the bed sheets, right?
Yes.
So in our hotel room of the future,
so you have like a mock hotel room.
Yeah, a series of hotel rooms with all the futuristic stuff you can imagine and a lot of stuff you couldn't imagine. The bed sheets are the world's first zero-water bed sheets. So instead of taking the sheet off the hotel room and going down to the laundry room filled with lots of machines, you use tens of thousands of gallons or liters, depending on your, of water a day.
Yeah.
You put it into a Purelin machine. This is the company that lives there. They won our UNLV prize for innovation 2 years ago.
You put it in where, sorry?
In a Purelin machine that replaces the laundry machine. It then melts that bed sheet at super high temperatures, turns it into little tiny perfectly spherical white pellets. Those pellets then roll into another part of the machine where it reconstitutes it as a brand new bed sheet. Plastic feels like 700 thread.
Why are we doing this?
Zero water.
Why aren't?
Why are we doing this? Yeah.
Zero water. Zero
water, and because you don't want to sleep in other people's bed sheets, and because during COVID, the sheets are what would collect people's COVID.
So
they would
it's
spend
a luxury
6 to 8
play
hours.
too,
So
right?
you're breaking down the sheet to nothing and rebuilding it every day.
So it's a brand new sheet.
So here's the luxury play. You as a customer, have you ever sat down in a hotel bed and thought, "Oh, this bed's comfortable," but I've seen those blacklight specials. I wonder who else has been on this bed sheet.
Yeah.
The answer with this, nobody. You have your own personal bed sheet. Talk about the epitome of luxury, right? But it's an environmental play because it uses zero water, and we kind of have a
How big are these
ring.
machines, though? I mean, you got 5,000 rooms in a hotel. You got to put 5,000.
They're like any startup, man. It's so cool. They're huge now. They're getting smaller, right?
Yeah.
The cost is more expensive than the norm now, but they're getting smaller. And they're working with the Las Vegas Valley Water District on water credits to bring the price down to competitiveness for somebody like Jonathan Jossel.
What about the plastic?
That is mind blowing.
of it?
Somebody thought of that.
UNLV student. He's actually the vice president of our alumni association. And here's the deal. It used to be at UNLV, a guy like that would graduate with a great idea, and we'd say, "Here's your diploma," and wow, that's a great idea. We really hope you do well out there. Man, I hope that guy. Now we say, move to Blackfire. Now UNLV will continue to give of its resources to you, and you'll be shoulder to shoulder with folks like LG and Caesars is there, Boyd's there. On the tech side,
Plaza's going to be
Plaza's going to come there.
That's impressive. Wow.
It's fun, man. It's so fun.
What a cool thing to have in Las Vegas. Who knew?
Well, and grown-up industries have this, right? Like, I mean, this is what we're still in such a young industry. Of course, we're still so young relative to other industries. This is what you look at the way in which USC and UCLA's film schools have driven patents that have in turn allowed the Pixars of the world to dominate the global industry of film, even as Bollywood would much rather be the king of film, even as Vancouver, right? All these other film hubs would love to be, to knock Hollywood off its perch. What's driving their innovation and therefore their leadership? USC and UCLA, right? You look at the number of patents that come out of those film schools. Those are and then being snapped up by the Universals and Pixars. That's what we want to be for the plazas. That's what we want to be for the gaming industry.
But so that's not where you're doing your diversification. Your diversification is separate. Separate like to that.
Here's the interesting twist that was unanticipated. The parlor game of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? Have you ever played this? You're shaking your head.
No,
so you know how this is played, right?
Yes.
Like, so you name an actor, and then you have to connect them to Kevin Bacon through movies they've been in together.
Oh,
right?
okay.
All right?
And of course, it's easy to do.
Yeah, because this guy's been in a million movies. So 6 Degrees of Economic Diversification, here's the way it works. So you got the strip, right, is the Kevin Bacon. It's the behemoth, or the gaming industry is the behemoth. The Raiders represent 1 degree of economic diversification away from the strip. They are fully taking advantage of the 150,000 hotel rooms, the awesome infrastructure to move people in and out, and a workforce that is the most spectacular in the world at experience creation. There's no workforce on planet Earth that's better at it than that, right? But they're in the sports industry, specifically the NFL, which is a multi-billion-dollar behemoth that is an entirely new industry, right? But they're close enough to the strip that the NFL was still battered and bruised and beaten by COVID, right? One of the reasons you want to do economic diversification is you want to make a total economy more resilient. So when one gets hit hard, another side gets, is okay. So Raiders are 1 degree of economic diversification. What we're now building around the sports industries here in Las Vegas is a sports medicine field, right? That's really blossoming. And what's then in turn diversifying off of that is sports medicine robotics, which we're doing over at the tech park. And by the time you get to sports medicine robotics, you've diversified so much away from the strip, you can't even see the strip from there, right? But it's not like the old thing we used to do in Las Vegas where you sort of throw a seed out in the middle of the desert, you throw tons of tax money at like some crazy new tech and say, hey, we want to diversify the economy, go nuts. And they go out of business because there aren't any law firms here that know it or consulting firms or accounting firms. This way, nobody sort of diversifies alone and we all grow together. So that's my pitch.
Okay. No, and it makes a lot of sense.
I'm hoping that you can both diversify and develop.
Yeah. Diversify and develop. Okay.
That's my pitch.
Got to come and see this thing to believe.
You got to come see it. And the pictures don't do it justice.
That's why I was Googling it just to see if I get a feel for it.
Yeah, right? I mean, once you're in there, it feels
I've never been
like
anywhere
nothing
like
in Las
that.
Vegas. Yeah. Yeah,
It's sort of like a theme park. But
it is like a theme park. Yeah. Every day it's more like a theme park. Yeah.
Can we go back to when you were at Harvard? How did the socioeconomics of gaming change from back then to now? And has it changed?
Well, for one thing, absolutely. As an economic force, the size and scope of the industry has just exploded, right? And so, we actually we also have an IP shop over at Blackfire Innovation. We actually just trademarked this phrase, and I'm going to test market it right now with you two for the first time ever.
Sure.
First time I talked about it, and I have trademark protection. So the fun economy. The fun economy turns out not trademarked yet, which was kind of a surprise. Okay. So here's how we'll define that, right? Did you know that in 2019, for the first time in the history of planet Earth, of Earthlings on Earth, we reached the point where 10% of the world's economy, meaning every dollar, peso, pound, euro that's spent on the planet, was spent on tourism. It had been 5%, 6% of the world's economy, right? $1 in $10 or whatever units of currency were spent on moving your butt from whatever part of Earth you are to another part of Earth for fun or for business, right?
So it's tourism in terms of travel, hotel, lodging, but not necessarily like, let's say you travel somewhere and then you spend money on food.
It could be. That's also incorporated into it, right? So it's
not trying to be too granular, just thinking about it's a huge number.
It's a huge number, 1 in 10, right? And that number is only going north as China's middle class grows, as India's middle class grows, as South America's middle class grows. Sports this year is probably going to hit 1% of what we call gross world product, meaning all the money spent in the world. 1%, $1 in $100 spent on sports, right? Entertainment, depending on how wide you cast that net, but counting movies and video games and these sorts of things, is another 3 to 4%. So who's good at those things? Las Vegas, right? And that's now 15% of the planet's economy. Manufacturing is only 11%. Agriculture is only 3.5%.
Right.
So the days of looking at Las Vegas as a fun place but not really an important or relevant place, are over, right? You know, it used to be you thought of real cities as places that had a factory by the river, and you made stuff, and then you shipped it down the river, right? That's how you had like a real city.
Yeah.
And you could still think that, but you'd be ignorant of where the economy's headed. So I think the global economy is bending in the direction of Las Vegas and the quote-unquote fun economy. So here's my tagline. You ready for this?
Oh, the fun economy wasn't the tagline.
The fun economy was the trademark. Here's the tagline. Fun is serious.
Fun is serious?
What do you think, Jossel?
I like it.
Yeah?
Fun is serious?
It's serious as business.
From your position, you can say that. Like, if I put that for a casino, it'd be a bit too...
Yeah, nobody would come.
We're serious about fun.
Right. We're serious about fun.
I should have followed you
fun
after I wrote that damn socioeconomic
Fun is serious.
piece. I should have followed Jossel instead of going there.
Well,
I like it. I'm into it.
I think you're maybe too intelligent for this podcast.
That is definitely not true, as our mutual friends could attest. So the size and scope of this industry is completely different, right? So
to what it was when you started teaching.
Yeah. I mean, you look at places like South Africa that have used tourism.
Well, do you know why there's no casinos in South Africa?
Why?
Too many cheetahs.
That's classic.
He didn't even laugh. He didn't even laugh. I mean, he smiled.
He
smiled. He really did.
I was snickering. I snorted a little, too.
Sorry, go on. You said about South Africa. There are casinos in South Africa.
There are, of course. Yes. Gorgeous ones, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that was a stratagem, right, in the new South Africa, right, to drive the economy. I mean, that was something, when I was a kid, you didn't think of, like, casinos as an economic development tool, like, ever, right? And now you have very respected nations with very respected leaders, right? You know, you have folks like Nelson Mandela saying, you know what, this can be a part of our economic development plan. Like, again, as a kid who grew up here, and my parents grew up here, I just feel like we've grown up when those things happen, right? And I get kind of proud.
But then look at some of the major established places that still don't allow it.
Oh,
I mean, look at Japan.
Supplied. Oh my
gosh. Look at Japan.
There was a year, it was probably 2016, where I think I flew to Japan 10 times for this conversation.
Oh, really?
And it's a fascinating conversation and still very much ongoing, and it'll probably be ongoing when my kids are my age.
Yeah.
You think so?
Oh, I'd like to say that, and certainly Osaka's moving, right? But yeah, it sure feels like the kind of conversation that we've been having for 20 years. And
look at the lack of progress they've made, and the big players. Well, I shouldn't say lack of progress, because who might say that? But some of the big players that were there have all pulled out now.
Yeah.
They're not even spending resources to think about it, which tells me it's not very far along, because that is a market that everybody should want to be in. But it is funny when you talk to people about it, they say, oh, Japanese, those are huge gamblers, or oh, China, those are huge gamblers. Or, isn't it just everybody gambles?
So I just got back from Singapore.
Yeah.
A geography drop for you, right? That sounds like a blowhard to say things like that, but I literally got back from Singapore 3 days ago, and they said, aren't we the worst gamblers in the world? Like, you study this, right? Aren't we the worst gamblers in the world?
Worst meaning like
the heaviest gamblers, the biggest gamblers, the most irrational, gamblers. And I said, everywhere I go, it's kind of like everybody thinks the drivers are bad, the worst drivers are in your city, right? Like when you go to France, they're like, we invented all the games that all those Chinese people play. We are the worst gamblers in the world. We made roulette. We made chemin de fer, which became baccarat, right? We are the worst. Right? Then you go to Australia, which statistically per capita gambles more than anybody on the planet, right?
Really?
Including anywhere. Yeah.
We had a big group last night of Australians here.
Oh man, and they'll say, look, mate, we are gambling mad people. Like we're the worst, right? So it's again, when you
go to Israel, they think they're the biggest gamblers in the world. You go everywhere I go, they think they're the biggest gamblers.
I completely agree with this. That's what I try to share with folks when they insist, right? That there's a cultural.
But you've answered that per capita, it's Australia.
Yeah, according to the data, the per capita expenditures on gambling, and it part of it's the ubiquity in Australia, right? Because they got the clubs, they got the pubs, they got obviously a big horse racing industry, they got mega casinos, they have every right at the
England is crazy.
England's crazy too, right? But England lacks a mega resort, right? There's no place like this gorgeous facility we're sitting in right here anywhere in England.
No, I wish we could do that. We should open an Oscars in England for sure.
Ooh. Right in Piccadilly Square with the Hippodrome there.
Yeah, maybe somewhere around there. We're looking at it one day. So, but you did do research in South Africa?
Yeah, I spent several trips down to that gorgeous, gorgeous country. And right at a time where, of course, the strategy was, how do we grow an economy? How do we employ a populace? How do we attract money from other places and make them drop it in this place and then go back to that place, which is, again, to be blunt, it's a pretty great transaction because they leave their money and they export all their costs, right? It's not like you're paying for healthcare for the Dutch who go down to South Africa and vacation, right?
Right.
Bluntly, tourism is an awesome business, right? Folks take money from over there and leave it here, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it was really fun to be. I did the same thing at Singapore when.
But there's probably different, and you've obviously researched this, like Singapore might have wanted, and I haven't studied that one, but it's different by each country, right? In terms of what they're looking for. Like Japan doesn't need necessarily tourism.
They don't need Singapore got a GDP bump of 2 to 3% just with the introduction of 2 buildings.
Right.
They happen to be casinos.
Yeah.
You're not moving the economic GDP needle in Japan, right?
Right.
They don't need the GDP
They don't need
needle.
it. But
what they need are conference rooms. What they need is a tourism industry. They have what's called a tourism deficit, where the Japanese leave their yen in economies all over the world. By comparison, relatively few dollars, rubles are left in the Japan economy. That's not something you want as a macroeconomist.
Right. But then in South Africa, you're probably not dramatically moving the foreign GDP increase, but you are finding and what I had heard was it was just a way to somehow tax more people there because
and employ,
gambling.
Right?
And create jobs.
Yeah, our grandfathers worked in factories, which were these places that hired thousands of people. Nowadays, the factories are mostly in China. Right? Now, the sort of postmodern factory, to a significant degree, is what we call the integrated hotel, casino, resort. Choose your term, but these big, massively complex buildings, which incidentally now are the most expensive buildings on Earth. I have this goofy professor slideshow that starts with the pyramids, and it looks at the most expensive building on Earth in human history. Right? So it starts with the pyramids. That was the most expensive building on Earth, and here's where it was. Blah blah blah, and it's funny because century after century, it's mostly in Europe. It's like cathedrals. And then like Milan built its cathedral, and that was the most expensive building on earth. And then, of course, Spain said, we're going to build a bigger one. And then they built a bit, right? And almost all religious. So it's like cathedral, temple in Asia, temple, cathedral.
Boom, casino.
Until, imagine as human beings, what does this mean for us as humans on planet Earth, right? Out of the almost 8 billion of us who live on planet Earth, when we went from the most expensive thing we've ever built, the most expensive building we've ever built, being a cathedral, to it being a casino. That happened with the MGM Grand when that became really the first $1 billion building when it was built on the corner of Tropicana on the Strip. And then we've seen it pass hands, but it's been a casino, right? What does that say about humans and what we value, right? 'Cause we build our palaces, so to speak.
So I have a trivia question, and maybe you'll correct me if this isn't right, but you definitely know the answer to this, I for sure, but I want to make sure I'm right. Gaming is allowed in every state in the USA with the exception of 2.
Correct.
That's correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And the 2 being Utah and Hawaii. I'm not going to test you because you definitely know the answer to this. But do you think those 2 will ever cave?
Oh, gosh, there have been conversations in both, right? And certainly Hawaiians and
Hawaiians
gamble. Utahns too, right? You look at what our buddy Greg Lee and the team at Mesquite, the Eureka Mesquite, have done right on the border of Utah. Right. That is a good business to be on the border of a place that doesn't allow you to gamble.
Right.
And, for years and years, that was Las Vegas, right? It was the one place that offered you this product that people love to do, right? And that really isn't conducive to innovation when you think about it. Like, monopolism's not a good path to innovation. So my great-great-grandfather, I always say, you could dig him up, and he'd probably recognize more or less every game on the casino floor. He'd probably be able to deal most of them. Mm-hmm. That's actually not good, right? He's been dead longer than I've been alive, my great-great-grandfather, and he was a dealer, right? But to be fair to Las Vegas, for most of the history, we were the one grocery store in town. It didn't matter if we sold spoiled milk. You still had to buy milk from us because we were the ones that had milk, right? And so I think we are now obviously in a chapter of tremendous competition, as you point out.
Yeah, but there's been so many variations of those games, and they just never work as well.
Yeah.
You can go to craps is craps, but you can play crapless craps.
Yeah.
And people still play.
So whose fault is that?
You play blackjack, and now there's so many variations: blackjack switch, free bet, all the different variations. But yeah, people just want to play blackjack.
Yeah.
So,
I guess
is it
single zero roulette's better than.
Yeah, but that's the same game. That's just different odds.
Right.
We're trying to actually.
I guess what I would say is, is that our fault or their fault, right? Or is that something inherent in them or inherent in us? Is it that our imagination isn't expansive enough to come up with something that does in fact knock blackjack from its perch? or is it something inherent in humanity? The challenge is I think we haven't, and I'm contrasting now with Silicon Valley, right? We haven't spent as much time in the super mature innovation mindset to really know, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly don't even know that anyone's thinking like that.
Yeah.
I hear people coming up with variations of these games all the time. But then look at the slot product. That has evolved dramatically.
Yeah. We've had, and again, it's evolved within parameters. You could dig my great-grandfather up. He's been dead longer than I've been alive. And you'd show him a slot machine and be like, that's a slot machine, right? and so, again, what other form of
but there'd be a
entertainment
crazy buffalo running across the street.
He's like, there's like super cartoon guys now, but again, so we have a class actually called Gaming Innovation, where the final exam is invent a new gambling game. And a few iterations ago, and we have 20 games that have sold, right, and done modestly well, right, nothing crazy. But one of the semesters, we said, all right, this can't be even any variant of anything you've seen before, right, just to see what they came up with. And one of the ones, you'll probably say I saw this somewhere else in the world, but they created 2 vacuum tubes that had 2 super oversized, coins. They weren't real coins, but heads and tails. And you pushed on 2 like air pumps that flipped the coins, and then you sort of deal or no dealed it, right? Where if it came up heads, you won, and you could get your money, or you could keep going. And man, people are like pushing the air pump things, right? And again, obviously, we've seen things that have totally pushed the envelope or within the parameters that regulators allow us to. But I don't know that we've tried it enough. And I also don't know that, because you'll hear a lot of folks say, well, people age into our product. We're more or less a sedentary activity. And when people get older, they gamble. Right. And that'll just keep happening. And you want to say, yeah, until it doesn't, right?
No, well, you're right. Anything can happen, but I do 100% buy into the concept of
aging into the product.
Because I see it on a daily basis. I talk to so many people in our bingo room on a daily basis, and they all, when I ask them, did you play bingo when you were in your 20s? They look at me, of course not. It doesn't matter. They didn't have iPhones. They didn't have the same things we have. They did not play bingo in their 20s, and then they didn't really do it in their 30s, and then maybe a touch in their 40s. By the time they're 50 and 60, they want to play bingo twice a day.
But you know who else said that? The CEO of Sears in 1980, right?
Okay.
You look at the Fortune 500 in 1980, like 450 of those companies don't even exist anymore, right? And if you were talking to the CEO of Sears in 1980, you'd be like, look, we've been here 100 years, and people come to our stores, and they buy our stuff. And I talk to all my customers. They like shopping at Sears. They like what we have. They like the way we offer it, right? And then something, right? So it's true until it isn't. And if we're not exploring whether we're on the cusp of some change, then and I'm talking about we as like hopefully university-based folks who are skeptical and scientists, if we're not pushing that envelope, then we're not doing our job as university type.
Well, we're definitely on the cusp of change in people playing online. I mean, that's happening right as we speak. The question, I guess, will be, and retail has proven that people will shop online, but it's a different experience to being gambling online, because you lose the social element.
Right. Yeah, and we have 2 VR programming studios in our casino innovation class that the students are using now, right? And that maybe is a next iteration. Some of the stuff we can't even talk about yet, right? Because at Blackfire Innovation we have some folks who are under NDAs, but again, it's what worst case scenario, you have a whole bunch of young people who are taking courses on trying to invent something totally creative and new, who then maybe it fails, but then they become an awesome employee for you, right, Jonathan? And they think differently. And instead of them saying, oh, you got a marketing problem, Jonathan, I'm going to turn to chapter 13 of my casino operations book and I'll tell you a solution. They say, I'm going to invent the answer to that, Jonathan. And I love that our students are now getting turned out that way.
Yeah, I need to get more involved in that.
It's fun.
Need to be inventing stuff. Absolutely.
Never dull.
Can you break it down to basics? You teach a Sociology of Gambling class.
Yeah.
What makes gambling so intriguing in your words?
So this is a fun class because over the course of a semester, I think we visit 60 countries, right? Visit virtually and talk about, here's what's interesting about gambling in this environment. And so certainly it varies culturally, right? Like just because there's a lot of similarities doesn't mean that there aren't massive cultural differences. If you walk a casino floor in Macau, as we all have, it feels a lot closer to the convention center than it feels like a casino. And everybody's drinking water, right? If you walked into an Australian casino and you offered somebody water, they would punch you in the nose,
Really?
right? Because it's about being social and sometimes often being drunk, right? Again, a Macau casino floor and an Aussie casino floor, not too far from each other, right? Hugely different, right? Feel different. But at base, this is the way I say it to my students, right? You're obviously risking something of value on an event whose outcome is in doubt. It's kind of like why we like watching movies or like being a Man U fan and sticking it out till the end or watching or reading a book, right? Here's what's enticing to us about each of those things. There's a good guy and there's a bad guy, right? There's Man United has a bad guy and it's Arsenal, right? There's always a bad guy in the James Bond film, right? And there's this tension that builds because you kind of have something emotionally invested in it. You've been a Man U fan since you're a child, right? This James Bond character's written really well, and I care about him. And you're not really sure in the end whether the good guys or the bad guys are going to win in the end, right? Gambling packs that into a mini moment, right? Every time I'm playing, there's a good guy and a bad guy. And unfortunately, Jonathan, you're often the bad guy as the operator, right? Or you're at least the guy that you're not rooting for as the customer. And there's that mini moment, right, where something's on the line, and you're not really sure where the good guy or the bad guy is going to win. And we love that moment, right? We love sports for that moment. We love literature for that moment. We love movies for that moment. So I think it does a better job than maybe any product ever at packing what humans love into a mini moment of risk.
So, but when you play a slot machine, you're not thinking, I got to get Jonathan's money.
Right.
You might be.
Hopefully not.
You might be. But that's, I don't think that's.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, Rich, you are? That's what
Every damn time.
well, you're a net loser.
Every damn time.
No, but they're clearly rooting against you having more of their money when they leave here, right? So they're not rooting against you as a person, but they definitely have, there are winners and losers. There are good guys and maybe bad guys is overstating the case, but you know what I mean? Like they definitely have a rooting interest.
But that's one element. And then, of course, there's the element that I like to believe in, which is it's not so much about the money, it's about the experience. Yeah. And you're providing somebody with an experience.
That's totally true.
And there's the money makes it fun.
Yeah.
Fun is serious.
Fun is serious.
And
good job. See, it's catching on.
Yeah.
The money makes it fun, but it's not about the money. You're here to have that fun. You're going to get your great steak. You're going to have fun at the pool. You're going to go to your room. You're going to go to a show. You're going to go watch a fight.
I think that's
legal
totally
fight.
True.
And and then you're going to have fun.
So I completely am aligned. We're not only on the same page, we're on like the same line in the paragraph on this, John. So, when you think about, so there's a new field called the psychology of happiness, where about like 15 years ago, the head of the Psychological Association said, we've studied people who are hurting and good for us for a long time. What if we study people who are flourishing at the other end of the bell curve, right? The other end of the scale. And so the research has started to really come in on this. It turns out that buying stuff, like your mom always said, that money doesn't buy happiness, right?
Yep.
That's totally true of buying stuff. Right? If you buy stuff, it's like eating a Snickers bar. You actually feel better in the immediate aftermath, and then you actually have a sugar low afterwards, where you actually go lower. When you buy experience, it elevates happiness before because there's an anticipatory happiness, during because you're experiencing the experience, and after because you revisit it as memory, which turns out to be. So I always tell my students.
And you post on Instagram.
And then you post it on Instagram and it lives forever, right? But I always tell my students, think of this industry in that way, right? You're not only building cool things, you're doing good in the sense that you're actually, when you're doing this right, you're actually growing gross global happiness. And what a cool line of work you are in.
I'm so glad you shared this with us, because that is exactly right. And I heard somebody else say it in a completely different context on a different podcast, I think. But to hear it in this context, in this podcast, is amazing.
And again, suddenly, Las Vegas isn't Pittsburgh, which makes steel, right? But we are a city that makes experience, right? So maybe Las Vegas contributes to gross global happiness. Maybe.
Talk to us about smoke-free casinos. Do you have any research on that?
Innovation?
We do have a company in there called Pure Tech. They're a classic started in a garage and now believe they have a solution, right? And so, obviously, this is the direction that the consumer life is headed, right? I saw a cool thing where the age that Kamala Harris was when she became vice president was the exact same age that Lyndon Johnson was in that famous photo when he was on Air Force One getting sworn in, right? He is a wrinkled old dude. She's the exact same.
Bo, not to interrupt you, but this is the best chef in Las Vegas if you haven't yet met him.
No way. And
Chef
he has no
Ben.
facial wrinkles either.
Chef Ben.
Wow.
He's a maestro. Not just makes the best burger
Nice
in
to
Vegas,
meet you,
but
man.
best
How are
burger
you?
altogether.
Cool. I'll come back and eat with you.
Thanks, chef.
So yeah, Kamala Harris, looks young, right? She's the exact same age as Lyndon Johnson on the day they became, occupants of the White House, basically, or occupants of the leadership structure. He is completely a wrinkled old man, right? And the supposition, the hypothesis was, it's smoke, right? We forget about how every room we walked into, every airplane we went into, everywhere we went was a big haze of smoke. And so people, you notice this now, right? Like 50-year-olds these days are smoking hot, right? I'm only saying that because I'm almost 50. I want this to be true, right? When my grandma was 50, right? Like she looked like Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? And so, and it's a really interesting hypothesis, right? Like we forget about how ubiquitous smoke was.
Yeah.
And we just existed in this haze, right? So the trend's clear. Right? We can say, well, smokers are gamblers and gamblers are smokers. Yeah, again, until they're not, right? And it certainly is way less the case than it used to be, right? And consumer environments.
You have data to support that?
So we have data to support that, as I'm sure you've seen, that there tends to be a significant drop in gaming revenue when you implement a smoking ban, followed by a gradual return to normalcy and even a replacement of some of the customers who left. And if you're in an environment where everybody shuts out gambling, it's even less pronounced. So it happens.
Yeah.
But in places like Australia, which has done it, right? Australia's created al fresco gambling patios. We were talking about this before the show, where you can smoke because it's outdoors, right?
And there's slot machines outdoors?
And there's slot machines outdoors.
That
yeah,
would
it's on
be
the clubs.
really hot.
it would not work so well here, yeah.
I can just see the machines melting.
But that's what happens, right? The world innovates in response to change.
Well, but I think there's also a line about, and eventually you're probably right, in the same way as other industries, smoking's just been outlawed, although in our industry it's just so hand in hand, and until it's not, like you said. But I'm a fan of options.
I have the option to swing my arm, which ends at your nose.
Yeah.
Right?
Please don't.
Cigarette. I love you, man. You're like my hero. I would never do that. But smoking is in that category too, though, right? I can puff away.
Yeah.
But it's not punching you in the nose. But it ain't helping you either, and it actually is hurting you. So, I think it's a little more sophisticated than our classic sort of, everybody has a right to do whatever they want, right?
Yeah, but the casinos should be better at giving people options so that it's not just forced upon everyone.
Yeah, but does a smoker who's inhaling secondhand smoke have an option?
Yeah, I'm going to give them a great option.
Are you? What are you?
I'm going to give them a smoke-free casino.
I've heard this.
A smoke-free area.
Yeah,
I thought we weren't supposed to announce it yet. I thought this was coming.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Look at me, protecting the business. You guys are supposed to do this.
We like to leak things.
Ooh.
We'll have you sign an NDA.
I got to say, I hear cool little leak things and ideas coming out of this building more than any other of our famous shiny buildings.
Oh, that's true.
And I love that
Like,
about you
thank
guys.
you.
I really do. Again, as a guy who's trying to convince the next generation to be like you, to be leaders of this industry, it's fun to invoke because it's frankly inspiring.
Thank you, Bo.
Wow.
That means a lot. Thank you.
What do you think the next 20 years of Vegas will look like?
I think we continue to grow, right? There have been so many predictions of doom, right? When Atlantic City opened, everybody's like, well, there goes the East Coast. There's never going to be a reason for the East Coast to come to Vegas, right? When tribal gaming opened, it's like, well, now you can go in your backyard. You're never going to come to Las Vegas. When, of course, Macau became a place that actually generated more gaming revenue, not now, but then, it was like, well, shoot, there goes. And you know what's happened at each one of these stops? Each one of these places have become virtual billboards for the Las Vegas experience, which everybody knows to be the Super Bowl of experiences, right? And so as a result, I'm with Jonathan. I think we're a long way towards saturation, right? Sheldon Adelson once said of China, my grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren will never see a day where the market saturation with gambling happens for the Chinese, right? And that was a cute line and probably true, but probably true much more broadly than that, right? It's still not a product that's offered anywhere near as much as people want to indulge.
Right.
So I think Las Vegas is in a great place. I think Las Vegas diversifies into, again, a fun economy. I'm trying to get this to stick.
Yep.
Mecca, right? Mm-hmm. And again, the first thing that you buy after you've bought everything that you need and you live in Peru or, Guangzhou, is after you've bought all the necessities, you buy fun, right? And what's a place where really smart people have come up with ideas that bring people to the middle of a hot desert to the tune of 42 million of them a year under normal circumstances?
Right.
This is a place where everything that brings the 42 million people here was hatched in the minds of Las Vegans.
Right.
It's not like we have a coastline, right, that's bringing them here, right? And so as a result, the fact that this has long been a smart place and an innovative place, and now, maybe, I think I'm older than you, Jonathan, but hopefully our generation, right now that we're being handed the baton, that's in our DNA, right? It's certainly in our training, right? And that we just carry that torch, and Las Vegas is going to continue to kill it.
Beautiful.
Exciting.
Love it.
And then do you have any advice for someone just starting out in their career, whether it's research or gaming?
Oh, gosh. I mean, broadly speaking,
As a professor, I mean,
yeah,
these are the things you're probably ready to go.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, right? Well, I'll share with you a story. So last night, I got to throw out the first pitch at the UNLV baseball game. Nice. And I was with my college teammate who happened to become the Moneyball guy at the Oakland A's.
Oh, wow.
Right? So that guy was a guy I knew way back when. He was a homesick kid from Southern California. I was a homesick kid from Las Vegas. I played baseball and soccer all through college. And so we got to be really good friends. I had no idea that guy was about to grow up into a guy that literally became famous in a movie that Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah.
But when he was homesick and he was a Southern California kid and he was miserable because we were in Boston, it was freezing and it was just miserable. I'd get the 2 a.m. phone call and I'd talk the kid down and we just became really tight. And I always tell my students, be nice to people because you never know, right? There was no part of that kid that said that guy's going to be subject of the most popular business book of the 21st century. It's the best-selling business book of this century. Moneyball is, right?
I've only ever seen the movie.
Yeah, the book itself is a brilliant business book because it's all about constantly thinking about how we do things and maybe disrupting yourself, right?
I get it.
So, yeah, be nice to people because you never know. And relationships are everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
That's great advice.
Well said, Bo.
Thank you so much for joining us. Is there a place that people can stay in touch with you on social media, website, email?
Gosh. Yeah, no, I mean, UNLV.edu. Again, you got a powerhouse university in Las Vegas. Know that, be proud of that, and know that we've grown up much like Las Vegas has, but also reach out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back again soon, but in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street, and of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @PlazaPod, and on Facebook, find us @Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.
Hey, it's Rich Johnson, the producer of On the Corner of Main Street. If you love this and you want more Vegas, please take a listen to Food and Loathing. Every week, veteran food writer Al Mancini and I, and some co-hosts, dive into the Vegas food scene, one of the best, most diverse, and comprehensive culinary communities in the world. We invite the chefs, owners, journalists, and foodies who make it so to join us. That's Food and Loathing. Available, well, the same way you found this podcast.